Yeah, it's delicious. If anybody knows what it is, let me know. This is its second year, so it's a little bit more bitter, you know, because its energy is going to flower and seed. But it's really cool, and when I find out what it is, I'll be sure to tell everybody.
And you got thistle?
Wow.
Thistles are one of my favorite wild foods.
Really?
It was one of the first wild foods I was ever introduced to.
The thing is just did a thing. Did you see the little thing? They went and visited this lady that made a thistle lemonade with sycamore berries or some kind
Sumac,
of
probably.
Sumac, maybe so. Okay, berries, and it was all with mint and honey.
Boy, that sounds delicious.
And it was lemonade, and they said it was good.
Yeah, the bull thistle's real good, and you want to get it, of course, before it flowers. Like part of, I guess, harvesting herbs will start right in with this whole piece of it is plant energetics. When a plant is a seed, and a sprout is putting all of its energy into growing upward, into the stem, into the leaves. And then up until the point where it begins to form a bud, all of its energy is in the leaves and the stem. So if you're going to harvest a plant, you want to harvest it when it has the most amount of energy in that part. So, you know, right now with this thistle, it's a perfect time to harvest the stem because its energy is still very much in this, life force is in there. A little while on, it's going to have its energy in the flower, and this will be a lot drier. It'll be a lot more fibrous and, you know, not as juicy, not as good, not as tasty, not as succulent. So that's a good thing to know. If you're harvesting a flower, then you obviously, you know, can do it when it's flowering. If you want to harvest when the plant's in flower, the leaves aren't as good. And if you want to harvest the plant, you know, when it's going to seed, the seeds are powerful, or the root's also powerful at that point. It goes pretty much stem, leaf, flower, seed, root. So you always harvest root plants at the end of their growing season, whenever that is. Most of them it's in the fall, but some of them happen throughout the spring and summer as well. So that's a little thing to know. So right now this is perfect, and the trick is getting to it. You need a few tools for harvesting herbs. The thing that you obviously want to have when you're harvesting thistle is a good pair of thick gloves, because these are unbelievably sharp and they can get through almost anything. So not just any old gardening gloves, but like some real thick leather, rawhide kind of things. And you just take it and you cut it off somewhere near the bottom, and then you start taking the leaves and peeling them. Start at the bottom and peel all the way up, and it's a little like celery. It has some strings in it. So as you're peeling, the strings will come out, and what you'll be left with is this long tube that is crunchy like celery, but, you know, sweet and tender and delicious. Wow. And it's full of moisture. So if you're ever, you know, it's also kind of a good survival food for that reason, because if you're ever needing moisture, that's one of the plant sources for a whole great deal of it.
So you're not using the leaves. You're just taking the leaves off and eating the tube.
You're eating the stalk.
I thought it was the leaves. She said they were using for tea.
Well, they might have brewed a tea out of it.
Yeah, it wasn't even brewed. They just blended it into a lemonade.
Well, that's a whole other thistle than I know about.
You don't want to do that, okay?
Well, you might want to. I just personally don't
send
have
it to you
experience
and let
with
you
that.
look at it and see what you think.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, how many of you guys know what it takes to give something to somebody? In order to give something to somebody, first you have to possess that thing. So I really teach what I personally know, and what I personally have experience with, and what I own with my being and my body. Because that's my wisdom and that's my truth. And really that's all I offer. I will give other people's truths if people want to look into it, but you know, we have a lot of senses, a lot of things we can learn about the plants. The most important journey that we have with the plants is the journey of the inward self. You know, every plant is different and every person is different, and everybody is going to have their own relationship with certain plants. And there's no textbook out there that's going to teach you what your relationship with those plants is. But you're going to find that out as you uncover it. And the nice thing to know is that you don't need to be overwhelmed by all of the facts and things that are in books. It's really easy to get confused about what is this for, what does that do, you know, I've heard this about that and that about this. And really it's just so simple. You've been contacting plants your whole entire life. Unless you've been living in a bubble, you've been running into plants, and plants have been speaking to you your entire life. Maybe you didn't know that it was significant because it wasn't something that you were taught in a scholastic sort of way. It was just a very natural kind of analog stream of consciousness kind of communication, but it was communication nonetheless. So the plants that are good for you are most likely the plants that you have already been in contact with and that you've already come and have a good relationship with in your life. And what really helps to get clued into what plants you want to work with and what plants want to work with you is by thinking back to your childhood, to what plants were around you when you were little. If you had like violets growing in your yard, violets are an incredible nutritive and medicinal plant. Same thing with lamb's quarters and daisies and chickweed and all of these things. They're all incredible medicinal and edible nutritive plants. Although they're very common, so oftentimes they're overlooked. Though that's really where you begin. You start to look at your relationship with those plants, and then you start to learn that these plants bring you to new plants, and you start to learn about those. And it's sort of like meeting people. You just get to know them a little bit at a time, and some of them you learn really well and you develop a really incredible relationship with. Obviously, when you're looking at herbs and plants, there are some tools that you have around. Some things are, like a good pair of gloves. I typically harvest with my bare hands just because I've always done it that way. The only plant that I've started using gloves with, besides thistle, is nettles. I used to go and harvest them by hand and get stung all over, and I just finally got tired of doing it that way, and I said, all right,
It was nettles, I was thinking.
I'll get stung with, nettle leaf is one of the best wild foods on the planet. In fact, somebody asked me once, when I came to Asheville, one of my introductions was a hike up in Craggy Gardens with like 3 consummate botanists and herbalists. They were just so intense about their knowledge of plants, it was just unbelievable, because I know a lot about plants, and I have, since I was a child, been learning about plants, but these guys were such aficionados, I felt like a complete baby around them. I'm like, well, isn't that? And they're like, well, no, actually, it's this. If you bisect the seed pod, you'll see it has 4 lobes instead of 3. And I'm just going, okay, this is way over my head. I've got a lot to learn here in Appalachia. There's a lot of real plant experts around here. But anyway, yeah.
Nettles.
Right. One of the guys that I was hiking with, he said a really good question was, if you could only have 3 plants in the whole world, what would they be? If you could only have 3 of them to live on. And I had to think about that, and I've actually kind of thought about that for a couple of years. What I finally came up with was that I would definitely choose nettles, because it has every vitamin and mineral in the human body in it, in abundance. It also has more chlorophyll than any other herb. And it is just so fabulous in every possible way. I have used nettles and I absolutely love it. You can eat the leaves raw, you can steam them like spinach, you can the nettle seed is medicinal. The nettle is a specific tonic for pregnancy and childbirth. It's good for cleansing the lymphatic system. It's really good for the breast tissue and all parts of the male and female reproductive organs. It's just really a fabulous all-around plant. And so in every possible way, it would definitely be on my list. The other 2 plants would be sunflower, because of the versatility of sunflower. You can obviously eat the seeds. You can also plant the seeds, and they grow into microgreens, so you have like a salad. And then you also can let the plant grow into a beautiful flower, which attracts all kinds of good things, and then use those seeds and press out an oil, so you can make an oil out of it. So it's really a versatile plant. And then the 3rd plant, I'm still a little on the fence with it, but I think I would probably choose grapes, because it's a fruit. And it would be good to kind of have like a seed, a green, and a fruit. But so grapes, and then also because the grape seeds are so good for you, the grape leaves are edible. And obviously the grapes are delicious, and you can make them into wine. So, I mean, what a perfect world, really. So that's what I would do. So anyway, the gloves, for digging or for harvesting nettles or any other plant that might be a little caustic on your skin or have prickles or something. And then And then two tools that I personally use for my plant medicine is a knife. And this is my plant harvesting knife. I only use it for plant harvesting. I'm kind of particular about it like that. It's sort of just a magical knife. I don't use it for household tasks. But it's one I always keep in my bag for harvesting. And I do a lot of harvesting by hand, but sometimes I will use a knife in the case of nettles or some other things. And then a stick for digging. This is my digging stick. It was just found like this, and it's just absolutely perfect for getting into the ground and digging up those roots and stuff. It's fabulous for that. So having a digging stick is a good idea. I think in the old ways people used to carry one, and as they would travel they would just stop and dig up a wild onion or stop and dig up a wild potato, and they would just be their way. These were the tools that you would just have in your tool belt many, many moons ago. Now the last thing that I bring when I harvest plants is I bring my heart and my love and my gratefulness and my honor for the plants, for the gifts that they give me. And it isn't for me like this real serious thing that it is for some people. It's not like you must honor the plants. And I just don't get that serious about it, because I feel love for the plants, and it's very beautiful and it's a very happy feeling. And when I share that aloha with the plants, that's, I feel like, what they really appreciate. That's what they really want. So sometimes it's good to offer a little something to them. Sometimes I might offer a little crystal or a little something, or sometimes a little cornmeal. Thank you for growing. Thank you for nourishing me, so I'll nourish you. The ultimate symbiotic relationship that we have with the plants is our breathing, because every time we exhale, that's the air that the plant breathes, and likewise when the plants exhale, that's our oxygen that we breathe. So in a sense, just sitting and breathing together, just sitting and breathing with the plants, that's the way that you can share with the plant, and you can honor them. And then lastly, the other thing is that we share our love. That's probably the most important thing that we share with the plants, is our love and appreciation for them. They are so beautiful. They are so extremely beautiful. They're so alive. They're so alive in this world that we live in, with all of its stress and toxins and pollution, and look at how beautiful they are. So, thank you for being here, and I recognize your beauty. That's really what they want. They're like women. They just want to be adored. So that's that for that. That's kind of what I have to say on harvesting. I don't have a particular time in terms of harvesting. I know a lot of people can follow, if you're interested in learning more about it, the kind of lunar cycles about harvesting. You can get really intricate with that, and you only harvest roots when the moon is in a certain phase, and you only harvest leaves at a certain time, and that's probably really interesting and fascinating to get into, but that's not something that I've personally done. So welcome to my garden, and I'm happy to answer questions about anything. I just want to walk around and I'll show you some very common plants in Asheville, in the Asheville area, and tell you what I know about them. So we'll just start to meander. I guess just the way that is easiest for most people to differentiate one plant from another is by things like shape and color and texture. How many of you look at this land and go like, it's all just a bunch of green stuff? You?
Sometimes.
Yeah. My own daughter?
Mama.
Yes. Arianna, you know a lot about plants. And yes, Lyra, did you have a question?
I love money.
I know. I love you too, honey pie. I love you too. Some people do that, and I've never really had a problem differentiating plants, but I guess it's just because I'm a very visual person. I look at it and it's real easy for me to say like, oh, these two leaves, there's two different kinds of foliage right here. This is a wild strawberry, an Indian strawberry, and this is buttercup. The leaves are a little bit the same. They both have 3 leaves, but they're two totally different plants. And if you just look closely, it's pretty easy to see how different they are. This is the buttercup, and the funny thing is that their flowers are kind of similar too. This is a buttercup flower, And a little later on, oh, here's an Indian strawberry flower. Indian strawberry is a vine like the other strawberry, like the one we're familiar with eating. Oh, what happened to my flower?
Are they edible?
Here it is. Well, you know, I've heard mixed things about that. I've been eating them, and I'm still on the planet so far. But so that's an Indian strawberry flower. That's a buttercup. They're both yellow. There's a few subtle differences. This one has some green around it. And buttercups, you know, they have shiny petals. They're very beautiful. And their greens are also the same, and they're kind of growing in the same place. So, you know, sometimes nature plays April Fools with you. And you get these very similar kind of plants growing in the same area, and they confuse the herbalist. And the herbalist comes home and they make tea out of something that they didn't intend to make tea out of. So it's good to get real good at kind of discriminating the different shapes and textures and things of the plants. Yeah, so Indian strawberry has a berry on it just like a strawberry. It's seedier, and it doesn't taste, it's not very sweet, has a little sweetness, and most of the textbooks that I've looked into say it's inedible, which just means it doesn't have any nutritional value. But that being said, I've also heard traditionally it's been used by the native people as a food. So I would venture to say it probably does have some good quality in it, and whatever mild toxic component it might have is probably something that your body can eliminate pretty easily. You know, a lot of plants have little bits of toxin in them. I mean, like romaine lettuce has little bits of opium in it. Common greens all have a little bit of a toxin in them, but it's very easy for your body to eliminate a really tiny bit of a colloidal toxin. It's a lot easier than it is for it to eliminate you know, a chemical that is created and manufactured that's not in a biomatrix. Like the plants have everything in this perfect form, and really it's a survival mechanism so that animals and people don't eat too much of it. So it's kind of like a natural timely obsolescence or safety valve. You know, you're eating romaine lettuce, you're eating it. Finally you go, I'm done eating romaine lettuce. Okay, I feel good now, I don't need any more of that. And then the plant still has enough life force energy, enough leaves to produce flowers and seeds and carry on being romaine lettuce on the planet. So that's why it's there, and it's really a negligible amount. So sometimes when they say, well, there's a toxin in a plant, they're not taking into consideration the fact that there are a lot of other biofactors that make that toxin no big deal. So right here we have pokeweed. In the South, this is a common food plant. They call it poke salad, and it is edible. The young leaves, like on this plant right here, are edible. You definitely do need to cook this one, and you definitely do want to change the water that you're cooking it in 2 or 3 times to get rid of the toxin that's in it. Poke is a really powerful medicine. There are basically, let's see, there are several, there's nutritive, tonic, and medicinal plants. So I'm just going to deal with those 3. There are plants that are just purely nutritive, then there are plants that have a little bit more of a tonifying action on the organs of the body, and then there are plants that actually help to purge the body and cleanse the body. Poke is definitely in the 3rd category, and it's definitely a very powerful medicine. And it can be very toxic. It can be the root can be very toxic. This is probably perfect actually for harvesting a poke root. It pulled up real easy. We've had a lot of rain, so it's pretty easy to. You only want to use the root when it's about the size of your thumb. So this is one of the exceptions to the rule of harvesting. If you harvest this one in the fall, its medicine is so powerful that it's too much for the body. So you need to get it when it's a little bit younger, like this is just about perfect. And then you take it and you make an alcohol tincture of it. And this is the remedy that will help with really deep colds in the chest and flus that you cannot kick. Like if you have, you know, and I've actually personally used this on my husband. When he had a cold and he couldn't get over it, he had to be in bed all day for a couple days, and that doesn't usually happen to my husband. It was kind of shocking to see him in bed for a couple of days. And I had some tincture of fresh poke root, always fresh, and I gave him just a few drops, maybe 6 drops in a glass of water. Next day, totally fine. It was like it just turned it around. So it's very powerful, but I tell you, I don't use it very often. I use it very selectively.
So you're saying you make it the tincture fresh, but you can use it in the winter?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, yeah, yeah. Some people tincture with dried herbs, and that's totally fine to do for a lot of herbs, but for the sake of some of them, they lose a lot of their properties when they dry. They change, and so you want to tincture it fresh. Poke root is definitely one you want to tincture fresh. This, by the way, this little plant right here, this little plant has saved my life. And I don't know what this plant's name is. This plant has little yellowish white flowers on it in February, and it smells like lemon, honey, and jasmine all mixed together. It's like the most delicious smelling flower in February in the winter when it's still freezing cold. And then the flowers continue until about April and May, and then they grow these little berries that are red, and they're sort of like an upside down heart shape, or kind of like a womb shape, and they're red. And anyway, if any of you know what it is, if this goes on YouTube later and people are looking at this plant and they say, oh, that's a such and such, call me. Or send me an email, because this is a magic plant. It's amazing. It loses its leaves in the fall. Yep. Yep. So, and if any of you find a plant along the way and you want to know what it is, just holler out. There are no flowers here, but this little green right here is called heal all. This is a major, incredible healing balm, this one, heal all. It grows kind of in the grass like a carpet. It does have a very beautiful flower on it in the summer, which we may be able to see somewhere else in the yard. You can eat it. It's definitely an edible green. And it has many other wonderful names throughout history. This one has been used for a very long time, quite widely. One of its names is self-heal, one of its names is woundwort, one of its names is Hercules woundwort, one of its names is heal all, self-heal. So it's really it's an incredibly healing plant. The application is really, honestly, I mean, when I tune in with it, it's like healing for everything. It's healing for every possible reason. Very specifically, though, I do know that it is wonderful for cuts and wounds and bruises and scrapes. So it's just a good, natural first aid, along with one of its friends, Plantain, right here. But, you take some of these plants. Somebody has a cut or a bruise, and you just put it in your hands, and you rub it together like that, and then it gets a little juicy and bruised, and then you can put that right on the cut or the wound. It's kind of like a natural Band-Aid. So usually it'll stick if you have a blister when you're hiking or something. The Plantain is the best one for that. Heal all is also incredible. It's incredible for healing all sorts of wounds very quickly.
Doesn't it? It gets flowers.
Yeah. They're
like
purple and yellow. They'll have different colors. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. Hopefully we'll find one today, but if we don't, then you can.
But
you
you
can
use
still
the leaves,
recognize
because
it.
I've just heard about the flowers.
Yeah.
Like making tea out of them.
You can eat the leaves, and you can use them for other reasons.
I don't think I'd know it without the flowers.
You can actually eat them.
Yeah, you can eat them. They taste really good.
Cool.
Has it been your personal experience that a lot of the local herbs here are more powerful than echinacea, goading seal, those kind of things everybody uses?
There are a lot of really wonderful herbal products. So I don't want to say that, but I personally, when I have a really powerful experience using herbs, it's almost always with herbs I pick myself that grow in my area. And the longer I live in a place, the more the plants come that I need.
Yeah.
I really believe that the fairies or the nature spirits or the universe somehow brings all of the little seeds that I need into my garden and plants it for me. So it's really wonderful to use the herbs that grow in harmony and symbiosis with me, with my energy. I walk on them, I breathe with them. So they're more tuned to me than plants that are grown in Oregon, which are great.
Yeah.
So, but that's what I do.
Yeah, I was curious.
Right over here is burdock. See, we've gotten all of 10 feet through my yard.
Wow.
It's going to be a really long walk.
Is it? Awesome.
Burdock, wonderful plant.
Did you plant that, or is it just growing there naturally?
I planted it.
Oh, okay.
It was a gift from. So the seeds were a gift, and I planted them 2 years ago, and so this is their second year of growth. I'm so happy they're growing. Aren't they pretty? Most people think they're a weed, and they try really hard to get rid of them, but I love them. So burdock is an incredible blood purifier. Absolutely incredible for cleansing the blood and cleaning the skin. So it definitely supports the kidneys, because anything that works with the skin will need to work with the kidneys. Whatever your kidneys don't eliminate comes out of your skin. So if you have breakouts and things all over your face or your body, you can support your kidneys by using good kidney teas, and that will usually clear up your skin condition. So that's just a little thing to know. The medicinal, the edible, actually this is an edible too, edible and a medicinal. The root is the part that you use, and I don't know that we're going to pull one up just now because these ones are precious. And they're very hard to dig up, especially in clay soil like we have in Asheville, so you need a good shovel to dig it up. The root is long and straight, and it can go down really, really far. You've probably seen burdock root in the store. And it's very big in Asian cooking and Asian cuisine. You chop it up and you cook it in soups or blend it if you're raw.
They're pretty skinny, the ones I've seen. Yeah.
They can get really big.
I've been to a macrobiotic potluck where they had bird dogs. They used them like hot dogs.
That's
The
a
whole
good
bird.
idea.
But you have to
Lyra.
really, it's another thing that it's kind of bitter if you don't like soak it or something. Isn't
No.
it? No?
I used to think that about burdock
Okay.
root, because the leaves are actually quite bitter,
Okay.
but the root is not.
And you can eat the leaves.
I won't say that because I don't actually know that, but let's try it. I mean, I know that it's not going to hurt you, but it's so bitter. You're welcome to try it, but it's actually a good thing to try that because you can really get what a bitter herb tastes like. That's incredibly bitter, but the root's not so much. I made burdock burgers raw,
Really?
out of the roots. Thank you, honey pie. So the root is really delicious. It's a lot like a kind of a tough carrot, and it's very nutritive. It's really good for tonifying the whole body and cleaning the blood. So I love herbs that are also foods, because then you're really following the law of Hippocrates and letting your food be your medicine, and you're also saving yourself the trouble of having to take pills. So it's good if you can eat your medicine. This is a good example of yellow dock, and you can see the flower. You can see that it's good to learn the difference between, could somebody get me a burdock leaf? Between yellow dock and burdock, because they're both docks and they look a lot alike. It's good to learn the difference between these ones. This one's a little longer and thinner. It has this red stripe down the middle, and this one is wider, and the edges are a bit more toothed. Yep.
For me too. What a
Burdock and yellow dock. And of course the flowers are totally different on them. The medicinal part, you can eat the young shoots and leaves. They're very high in vitamin C, but once they get to more mature, they start to get really bitter, so they're just not tasty and you don't want to eat them. The root is the part of this one that you want to use for medicine. The root is yellow, bright yellow, and it is an incredible alterative, so it's good for cancers and skin eruptions and all sorts of things like that. It's an excellent plant to use as a douche or in an enema. So it has a lot of really wonderful benefits. This is also the root. The root of the yellow dock plant is the highest plant source of iron. The essential nutrient iron of all of the plants in the plant kingdom. So a lot of women use yellow dock root tincture when they're pregnant in order to take care of anemia issues, or anytime you have any sort of anemia issue or liver issue. The yellow dock root is a really good tonic to take for that. So, yep, very good nutritive plant. Again.
Summer? Summer, on the yellow dot,
Yeah.
would you make an alcohol tincture with the root?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, or you could also make the root into a tea.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So you could dry the root and make it into a tea, or you could tincture it.
Oh.
Honeysuckle. You guys know about honeysuckle?
Oh.
Do you guys know how to eat it? No? Well, my daughter Arianna told me how they were eating it. I haven't personally done that, but apparently there's this little, you take the flower and you kind of split it open, and then there's a honey drop inside. You pull out the center part, and there's some sweetness on it.
You can just bite off the end.
Yes, that's the way
That's
I
how I
always used to do
always
it.
did it, yeah.
My daughter had a new method. I was hoping she'd
okay,
be here and she could
okay.
show me. But they smell just exactly like Hawaiian white jasmine. They're absolutely phenomenal flowers. They smell so good. And their properties are a lot like jasmine, which is used in tea, especially in China. It's used in a lot of herbal teas. So it imparts the same flavor as jasmine flowers do. It imparts the same flavor as jasmine flowers do. So I actually harvest this. The flowers, I just harvest them like this, and then I dry them, and then I steep them into tea, and they taste like jasmine tea. They're delicious, and they're soothing, they're uplifting. It has kind of a calming, mildly sedative sort of effect. Okay, there are two kinds of plantain. Both of them are edible, both of them are medicinal. This one is called English plantain, and it has a long skinny leaf on it like that. Do you see? But plantain always has these veins that come up vertically through the plant, so that it doesn't branch out like veins do in a lot of other leaves. It has the long vertical leaves, and the flower is a long stalk and then sort of almost like a grass head on top with this spray of tiny little flowers that comes off of it. That's what a plantain seed looks like. And then the American version has a stalk with all these tiny, tiny little, they look like little buds, and they're actually little seeds, little black seeds inside. The seeds, this is closely related to psyllium. So the seeds are very mucilaginous, and they're very soothing for the intestines, and they're very cleansing for the intestines, just like psyllium hull is. So you can harvest the seed. It's a bit tedious to get enough to use, but once you have it, you can use it for the same purposes of intestinal cleansing that you would use psyllium for. And this is also edible. So you can eat the plantain leaves, and they're fabulous. They're very good. They're also good for cuts and bruises and wounds, and they're also good internally for all manner of different things, but I like to eat them. This is a really good example of a chicory. Okay, well these are gorgeous. I mean, look at these leaves. Are they beautiful or what? Look at that. Yeah. You know, you'd pay like $3.99 for a bunch of these in the grocery store. In fact, a lot of the dandelions that they're selling in Asheville are actually chicory.
Oh, really?
And the way you can tell is that look at how they're fuzzy on the underside. I love to make a salad out of these. They're also very good. Chicory is really good for diabetics because it has a really high content of this substance called inulin, which is like one step away from being insulin. So it is really easy for the body to make insulin when you eat chicory. So it's good for regulating blood sugar, obviously. So if you have any kind of issues with that, it's good to know about. You can use the root. Some people take the root and they roast it, and they make it into a coffee substitute. Mm-hmm. So chicory is good for that reason, but for me it's a really delicious food, and it has a brilliant periwinkle blue flower on it a little later in the year, and the flowers are edible, and they're very pretty in salads.
Mama,
you have to be.
eat these?
Yeah, you can. They're kind of bitter though. Sometimes you may like it. You can try it and see. I usually take them and I marinate them with a little olive oil, namashoyu, garlic, and herbs, and then I'll toss in some tomato or some apple or some strawberries, whatever's seasonal, and it is the most delicious salad. So good, so good. I eat it up. But this one's wild lettuce, and so instead of being furry on the underside, it has these little pokey bits that come out, and it grows up eventually on a long stalk. It grows up on a long stalk like that. You see, it has the white sap like dandelions do. It's actually an analgesic sap. It's a pain reliever. So if you make the tincture of this plant, you can use it for pain relief, and it's especially effective with children.
Oh, so that's how you, those little barbs?
Yeah. Yeah.
Those little barbs on the...
What is it called again?
Wild lettuce. And it's very bitter, so I don't like to eat it, but you know, it's sure a hit if you ever do want to eat something really bitter for fun.
See the barbs?
Yeah, well, that's things raw foodists do for kicks, right?
Yeah.
Eat wild lettuce or juice it. Ooh, that might. Ooh. Can you imagine? Anything else though?
Like our lettuce in the garden when it starts getting bitter.
Exactly. That's kind of how all of our food plants started out. Was a little less tasty than they are now, but a lot more medicinal than they are now. And so we hybridized. We worked with them. Some people consciously work with the plants, and they get plant results that are better for them, better for people, and more enjoyable. But some people work with hybridization, and they do it for the wrong reasons, and then you wind up with these nutrient deficient crops. So, you know, working with the plants isn't necessarily bad to try to produce a tastier fruit that is more appealing to us. But when you start to mess with the power and its immunity, that's when you start to have trouble. So anyway, wild lettuce is fun. Make an alcohol tincture of that.
But the chicory is kind of like lamb, I mean, like very soft,
Yeah,
isn't it? Very soft.
It's really fuzzy on the underside.
Yeah, okay.
Make an alcohol tincture and use it just to add it just for medicinal or...
You use it for pain relief.
Oh, pain. Okay.
Yeah, especially for children.
Okay.
It's really good, and it's not toxic. It's a non-toxic pain reliever.
Okay, thanks.
Some people use this stuff for warts. I've never like had the fortitude to put it on 3 times a day for 7 days. For some reason, I space out after 3 or 4 days. But this white milky sap is supposed to be good for removing warts. So I recommend you all try
I'll
that.
try that. I've got one.
And get back to me.
Yeah.
So this is chicory growing a little bit taller and getting ready to flower. This is the chicory buds, and pretty soon they'll have these beautiful blue flowers. And I was going to say earlier that you want to get right on it when you see the flowers bloom in the morning, because they don't last long. They turn white and they shrivel by the end of the day. So the morning time is when you harvest the chicory flowers.
And what do you do with the flowers?
You can put them in salads.
Okay.
They're very pretty. You can decorate your cakes with them. They're just a beautiful thing. Wild geranium right here. Wild geranium. This one has had its flower. It has a little pink flower on it. It's also, one of its names is Cranesbill because of the shape of the seed pod. It looks like the bill of a bird.
It's called Cranesbill.
Cranesbill. And it's, from what I know of this one, the one thing that I do know about it is that it's a specific for scarlet fever. So if you ever have children that wind up with that, most of us have been vaccinated for it, but some people's children are not. And this, the tea of this and the compresses on the body, the cold compresses with this tea, would be really helpful for scarlet fever. Got a lot of violet leaves here. Here's a dandelion leaf. So let's just compare a leaf of chicory and a leaf of wild lettuce and a dandelion leaf so that we can kind of get some clarity on the differences. Dandelion right here, it's got a little redness in the leaf sometimes, not all the time. Smooth on the back, no hairs. Look at all, there are no hairs. It's completely smooth on the back. But, you know, it's pretty much the same shape, aren't they? I mean, that's kind of hard to differentiate. Look at how the vein pattern on the wild lettuce is different.
Wild lettuce.
Yeah, and then look at the backs of them and see how the chicory is hairy like this, and the wild lettuce has these sharp spines going along its main vein, and the dandelion is completely smooth. So this is a good way to know the difference. These two are yummy. This one is good medicine. Here's another good comparison to look at the vein structure of the English plantain. See, remember how it has these vertical lines going through it? And see how it doesn't branch out, and the dandelion branches out. and it's toothed around the outside. Most of us can identify this one. So if you can contrast it with the others, then you know it can help you learn about the others. Thank you, dandelion, for being so ubiquitous and teaching us about the plants. Plantain with its long, beautiful linear veins in our yard. This is a regular plantain leaf. Look how it's like a little rhubarb on the bottom, kind of. It has these little hairs when you pick it. And it also has those linear veins. Has the linear veins, but they branch a little bit.
The third plantain we've seen.
This is the second one.
Oh, because up at the
We
top,
saw
I
this
thought
one
we
up on
saw-
top
Oh,
with
okay.
the burdock.
Yes.
The regular one's
Yeah.
fatter, lots fatter.
Yeah, that's right. It's wider, and it's funny that they call it the other one English plantain because they were both brought in by the Europeans.
Herb walk. I'm gonna walk down the road and see all the herbs.
No, no, we've already seen all the ones that grow down there, so we're going to go back up through the forest next. We get to go through the woods. So yeah, one of the Indian names for this one is white man's foot, because it would grow in the foot paths of the white men, because it came in with their hay crops or things that they would bring in. They would come in with bushels of hay, the little seeds, and seed itself wherever the white people would go. So, but this one is a good gift. This is, we're kind of glad that they brought that one in. All right, good. But I'm going to give you to Lyra. There you go, just for you. I love this spot because this is where all of the ground ivy grows. And I have a good story about this one. Can you just come and just touch it and pick some and smell it and taste a little bit. This plant is so pungent. It's that when you're walking, sometimes you get that aroma wafting up, and you say, what is that wonderful forestal smell?
It's like a mint.
Yeah. By all appearances, it's probably in the mint family.
Camouflaged.
It even has a square stem, so it is in the mint family. Some of the other names for this one.
Oh, I got the grasshopper.
Okay, can you take the grasshopper out to the road and play with it?
Dun, dun, dun,
Please?
dun, dun, dun.
Look at him.
Now this is a nature grasshopper.
It is a nature grasshopper. That's right. Hey, Lyra, I'm going to talk about the plants now, so you need to be quiet or go somewhere else and talk. Some of its names, I call it ground ivy. That's the most common name for it. It's also called gill over the ground. It's also called ale hoof. It was used to flavor ale, and it probably tasted really good. We have a lot of really great mead makers in Asheville. I'd love to taste a mead made with this one. And it has these beautiful little purple flowers, and it's such a beautiful smell. They look a little bit like catnip. Anyway, this one, its primary purpose is medicinal, although you can make a delicious, delightful tea out of it. It's very refreshing to make an iced tea. Anybody want to have it? Have some or see it?
I do.
Okay. It works to remove blockages of the liver and the spleen. So particularly the spleen, whatever you're kind of holding in those organs can affect your body in all sorts of ways, mentally, emotional, and physical. So the ground ivy is really amazing for the purpose of getting rid of whatever is blocked up there. The Appalachian midwives and a lot of other midwives throughout the world would use this one, and they would feed it to all of their animals, and they would make tea of it for all of the women that were birthing. And they would do this because whenever they would do this, the placenta would always deliver very easily. And I was reading a book by Susan Weed where she talked about that, and I was researching it for the birth of my second child, because with the birth of my first child, I had a retained placenta where the placenta wouldn't deliver, and I hemorrhaged and I almost died. So it was very important to me to have some herbal allies on hand for the placenta for my second birth. So when I found out about this, this had been a plant that I've known my whole life. It's been growing in my yard since I was a little child, and I have a huge affinity for it. So I said, that's the one that I want to use for my birth. I want to have it in my birth kit. So I did take it, and I had a wonderful birth assistant. I completely recommend anybody that's considering birthing to have a doula because they're so wonderful and supportive in so many ways. And I had a whole birth plan written up for teas, and I had jars filled with teas and everything that I brought to the hospital. These 2 big boxes with all of my herbs and my teas and my medicines and my birth plan instructions, which were like this thick. And the doctors and nurses were they didn't know what to do with us. It was pretty funny. And everybody became helpful, and everybody was angelic, and we had a fabulous experience. And after Lyra was born, I was now concerned about the placenta coming out. And when my midwife said to me, well, it's coming, but it's kind of coming slowly, I had already discussed that with my doula. I just looked at her and I said, make me the tea. So she made me the tea of 1 teaspoon of this herb in 1 cup of water, and I drank it hot. And I had read in the book that if you administer this tea 1 minute later, the placenta is delivered. Well, I was watching the clock, and I drank this tea, and 1 minute later to the second, the placenta came out. It was such a miracle. It was so beautiful. And if you look closely at the leaves, they're shaped like little placentas. The veins look just like the tree of life in a placenta, and the shape of it is exactly like a placenta.
So you dried it? You dried the leaves?
I harvested it myself in flower like this. This is where I feel this plant is peaking, is when it's in flower like this. I harvested the aerial parts, which means anything growing above the ground. That's the medicinal part of this plant. And I dried it, and then I had it on hand to make into a tea. And so that's my wonderful personal healing account of this incredible common plant.
So do you recommend drying things before you turn it into a tea?
In most cases it helps because you're removing the moisture and then you're replacing the moisture, and when you replace it, it carries out all of the medicinal properties. It's definitely possible to make a fresh tea. You get different properties, and a lot of times your tea is not as strong. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. And a lot of these plants you can make in a sun tea. You can just put it in a big jug of water, fresh or dried, and put it in the sun all day, and it's that's a really nice kind of living way to make a tea.
Where's my grasshopper?
Lyra, only you and the grasshopper may know.
So you drink this anyway, though? You
Yes,
like to
it's
drink
just
this.
a lovely kind of, and like I said, with the placenta, it's interesting. A lot of times when we hold on to something that we're supposed to release, that's a spleen issue. And with me, I know that I have that sort of proclivity. When I felt the action of this tea in my body, I felt it hit my spleen, and I felt a release, and then the placenta came out. So, I mean, it really does what what they say it does, what I say it does. I want to talk a little bit about violets. The common blue violet that everybody knows and most people love, and a lot of people really like to eat if they've been paying attention. These leaves are incredible food. They're very mucilaginous. They are very cleansing to the lymphatic system, and they have a particular affinity for women's breasts. So anybody with like breast cancer in their family would do well to make a tea or eat this or drink a tea of it commonly. It's also a good tea for cancers of all kinds. And the flowers are edible and delicious and sweet and purple, and you can make violet syrup out of it by mixing it in honey or agave nectar, and it turns it a bright purple color. You can make it into vinegar, which also turns a beautiful bright purple color. And anyway, all around good stuff. Put it in your salads. But here's the trick with blue violet. The further you go down the stalk, and definitely in the roots, it's very, very high in oxalic acid, which you don't want. It's not real good for you. It's a good medicine. Like if you're having a really high fever, it's a good medicine to, cool off a high fever. There are also a lot of other naturopathic things that I would probably use first before I would go to an herb for reducing a fever. The thing that I would do first would be to wrap somebody in a wet sheet. That would be the first thing I do to reduce a fever. But if it wasn't happening, I would use a tincture of fresh violet root to drop a fever. But you want to eat the leaf part, and you'll taste it. I mean, just pick up a stem sometime and chew it down, and you'll get to this part that tastes a little funny. It starts tasting kind of off and soapy. That's the reason why you don't eat the bottom part of the stem. It has that chemical in it that it's a toxin. So the leaves are really good, but don't eat the roots. They look like little tubers. They look like they might be something good to eat, but they're not.
You have a rule of thumb about how you use taste to intuit what's good and what's not?
Yes, I do. There are probably, I don't know how many, but probably just a small handful of plants that are actually so toxic that you can't taste them and survive, like, water hemlock, and I'm trying to think of the others, but there are a few that you just don't, and they're very easy to know. So if you kind of can pick up like deadly nightshade and water hemlock and those things and learn what they look like, then you can taste all the rest of the plants freely. And the way that I taste it is I take a little nibble and I chew it up and I just taste it. And what you want to taste for is anything that feels like it's like kind of stinging your tongue or burning your tongue, because that could be an alkaloid. Anything that tastes kind of fizzy, and then anything that tastes bitter, and you're automatically going to spit it out if it's bad. You're automatically going to want to spit it out. And then you spit it out, and you just keep spitting and spitting. If it's a poisonous plant, I've done that a lot.
So you can really just trust your own body.
You can
100%. That's cool.
Yeah, trust your body. And I recommend that you start to do that, because then you'll start to learn when your body's telling you and what it's saying. That's a kind of wild lettuce also, and I eat this one, but it is extremely bitter. This one is not for the timid of palate. This one is pretty serious. So have some. It's really good. Very, very bitter.
All of a sudden, everybody wants to.
Anybody else?
I got some violets.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Arianna's going to leave the herb off now. This is a perfect spot for you to do that. Okay.
This all around here is chickweed. On the hilltop there's chickweed.
Yep.
This is chickweed right here. You guys can try it if you want. Okay. You can try it. It tastes really good. Here.
And this one's Latin name, I'll just teach with you because I know a few things that they might want to know, is called Stellaria media. So I stopped calling it chickweed because it's kind of, diminutive. Although it's kind of a diminutive plant, it's not very showy, it's not very like, here I am, and yet it's probably, this one was a good runner-up with nettles for the one plant that I'd have around if I could only pick one. This is an amazing plant. This edible plant contains all kinds of saponins, which soften cells and make them more permeable. So this allows the good things to get in to the cells, and it helps the bad things to get out of the cells. So it increases the cell permeability with the plant saponins. Sort of on another more energetic note, what Stellaria does is it helps your body and your being become more permeable to universal forces. So it helps attune you to the stars. And this is a lot of the chickweed, it's a plant that does not like a lot of heat or direct sunlight. So you'll find chickweed starting to grow its delicious greens as early as January in places. And then those patches will disappear, and the patches that are shadier will start to bloom. And so this one, I'm surprised we have one hanging on this long, but it's how fortunate for us. It's so succulent and it's delicious. It's a really good salad. You can make a really good pesto out of chickweed. A lot of the local herbalists make chickweed pesto in the spring. And the other thing that you can do with this is you can heal all kinds of eye infections with it. You can take the fresh plant and pour hot water over it and put it on pink eye, and a lot of times it goes away after one application. So very good for the eyes, very healing. I used it for Arianna when she had an eye infection.
You pour the hot water and then just use it like
and then you just put you put it, you just don't even crush it up or anything, you just put the plant right on there. It's very soothing. Yeah, it's also chickweed. Chickweed is a fabulous bath for any sort of skin irritation. If you have chicken pox, if you have an itchy rash or psoriasis or any of these common and acute skin issues, you make you dry the chickweed and then you make a strong tea of it and you pour it into your bath water, and it relieves the itching and it soothes the skin and it helps facilitate the healing. So really good herbal ally to know.
Tastes good too.
It's delicious.
That has a beef flavor to me. Like
Yes,
beef.
yeah, it does kind of. You're right.
I wonder if they're related.
The way that we identify chickweed positively is that, it has each of these stem bracts. Along each one, there will be these tiny little hairs that only grow on one side of the bract, but it'll be different. It'll alternate. Like here's this one, there's that one, there's that one, but only one little line of hairs that go up the side of each stalk. So there are some relatives that look a little bit like chickweed if anyone wants to examine that one closely and just see that funny little hair pattern that it has. And feel free to graze too. Feel free to pick some chickweed and eat it if you want.
Nice.
I don't know if you can, how easy it is. I might just pick this one and show you. See this one? This one's called cleavers.
And this is poison ivy right here. Do not touch it.
Another name for it is bed straw. I'm going to take this and make a tea of it. Yes.
After this, are we gonna watch the movie?
Those are kind of sticky
Perhaps.
stain
Yep.
things.
They're called cleavers because they cleave onto you.
Yes,
They have a little bit of nature's Velcro on them, in them. And right now it's in its seed stage. So it has these little round balls that come in twos. Anybody have a guess what that could be good for?
Lungs?
I won't spell it out.
It's like the heart. It's like the hearts for men, right?
So yeah, it's very, 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 very good for the kidneys. Very, very good for the kidneys and the prostate. And for cleansing the lymphatic system and the skin, obviously, because of the work with the kidneys. No, Lyra, no, not right now. So this one is like a specific for kidney stones. The fresh juice, 2 teaspoons full of the fresh juice is the dosage for kidney stones. It helps dissolve kidney stones and prevent them. And it's just an excellent kidney tonic. See, a lot of the herbs, like, they know right when to grow. So this one grows in the early spring, along with the dandelions and a lot of the little bitter herbs that are good for cleaning the liver and the kidneys and the adrenal glands. Because over the winter, we've kind of held on to a lot of stuff. And in the springtime, it's time to get it out so we can, start to grow again, right? So, so this one, nope, not right now. So this one is extremely good for the kidneys. And it's an edible, although a lot of people are reactive to it because it has these like little tiny hair-like barbs on the leaves. So some people have a low tolerance for eating it raw. So the best thing to do with this one is to juice it. You can obviously it makes an excellent sun tea if you dry it. So dried, it's an excellent sun tea or regular tea, but it makes a much better sun tea than it does with hot water. And everybody try a taste of it. It's really has a unique really neat flavor. Also notice how the stem is square shaped. And notice how there's the leaves.
So the whole
leaves.
thing, root and everything. If you
The best, well, pretty much, like if you noticed when I was harvesting it, that it sort of just like it breaks off. It doesn't really. I guess it kind of has a woodier bit of stem at the bottom, and that's pretty much what the root looks like. It's not. It doesn't go very extensive. However, so you can use the entire aerial part, And the best way to do this is to juice the fresh plant. And you can use a wheatgrass juicer or a green star, you know, any kind of juicer that does greens really well. Not all of them do. So a wheatgrass juicer, you can really get a lot of great juice out of that.
What your daughter thought was poison ivy. Because it was shiny and something.
No, that's a non-native invasive species of tree called the Alianthus, or the tree of life.
Just want to double check.
And I don't like having it grow as prolifically as it does, but it's all over the place.
Yeah, it sure is.
I brought you over here to look at this is an Artemisia. I'm not sure if this is the absinthe Artemisia, the one that absinthe comes from, but it's an Artemisia and it's called wormwood. This is like a medicine sage, you know. This is the kind of local. If you smell it, it smells a lot like sage. And if I were going to harvest this one for incense, which is probably what, you know, the only thing I would use it for right now since I'm pregnant. And this is a very strong medicine. But I would take a bundle of it in my hand, kind of like this, and I'd cut it part way down on the stem like that. And then I would probably get a couple more. And this one, this little greedy plant has been sucking up on my compost pile, so it's very nutritious. It's full of the good stuff.
It's supposed to keep flies away, is that right? Or is that what
wormwood is to expel worms and parasites. Very strong medicine. You know, a lot of toxicity, so you want to be careful using it, but for some diseases, certain herbalists swear by it. I personally haven't used it for anything other than incense, but pass that around. And so anyway, just to finish the whole, you know, I would take a piece of string, and sometimes I do this. If I don't have string, I'll take another plant, and I'll actually use the plant to wrap the other plants in.
So this is the plant that made that drink in the 20s that writers and stuff used to drink?
I'm not certain because there are 3 that look a lot alike, and I don't know if this is the actual genus. So, you know, and then I would wrap it up with string or another plant and make it into a sage bundle. And it's really excellent for space clearing, energy clearing, all of the stuff that sage is good for. So smell that, it really smells good. There you go. You've already been sucking off my compost, but here's a little extra something for you.
Cedar sage or something.
Incense.
Oh, incense.
Yeah, I'm going to burn it like a sage bundle.
Okay.
Does it also have any medicinal value? Or?
It does, yeah. You wouldn't want to eat it, and you want to be careful using it for medicine. But it has a lot of different properties for expelling poisons and worms and things like that. Here we have a lovely patch of heal-all right here. And and my favorite flower in the whole world, daisies. And daisies have an edible green. It's really delicious. Lyra, would you give one to everybody? An edible green?
Is that a certain kind of daisy?
I think this one is called oxeye daisy.
It's sweet.
It might be called Shasta. But they're all daisies, and they're part of the chrysanthemum family, and they have a delicious edible leaf. Lyra, you want to give some leaves to people?
It's sweet.
The Shasta daisy would be the edible too.
Yeah. Anybody not get one?
It's very sweet.
It has a really strong flavor. Did you get one?
I didn't get one. Are there?
Very good.
Oh, okay.
Just get one of the leaves.
Daisy?
Isn't that, whoops, sorry, sweetheart. Isn't that good?
Yeah.
Good.
It's a nice salad.
Good brain.
Oh.
Is this chickweed?
That's forage.
Oh, it's forage.
Yeah, that's a non-native. So I guess I wanted to bring you up here to talk a little bit about red clover. There was no red clover growing here when we bought this house, but since we've moved here, the fairies have planted it quite in abundance. Red clover is an incredible plant because it is very high in vitamins. It has lots and lots of, it has every essential vitamin in it, so it's an incredible supplement. And it also is an incredible blood purifier, and it's purported to be, by a lot of experts, extremely good for cancer. It's supposed to be like the best plant for cancer. So, good one to know about.
How do you eat that one?
Well, the flowers are delicious in salads. The leaves are delicious in salads in small quantities because they're pretty bitter. Yeah, you can just eat them. And a really good way to use red clover is actually to dry it and to powder it and use it as a green supplement. You mix it into a smoothie or whatever.
The leaves?
The whole flower, yeah, you can use the whole flower, but the leaves specifically for the nutrient value. So red clover, and then when I was a kid, of course, I used to just pick out the little flower bits and eat the honey. Anybody like to know anything about the herbs? Yes?
What about the nettles?
Yeah, nettles.
Right now we're in an apartment, so I don't grow much. Can you buy it, or how do you...
Can you buy nettles?
Is it a weed that you just find out, or do you buy it and plant it?
Wow.
I'm curious about getting
I've
nettles.
never ever seen nettles seeds anywhere that I've been. And nettles doesn't grow in my yard. So I don't have any to show you, but I can tell you it does grow around here. And it is really good for you. So find it in the forests, you find it along the rivers and waterways in a lot of places, and it's unmistakable because it stings you.
What's it look like?
It has a leaf, well, there are two different kinds. Their leaves look a little like these leaves do, a little bit like that, but these ones are a little bit rounder. The nettles are a little bit more pointy. And they grow tall. At this time of year, they're probably about this tall, maybe a little lower, maybe like this tall to this tall. They're very much in their like optimal stage right now for harvesting. So if you find nettles, or if you know of somebody, to start asking around for a place to harvest them. But I have seen them for sale at Green Life. Really? Sometimes, not always, but they sell them over where the orange juice and stuff is in bags. So somebody grows them, or knows, or has a big forest full of them. But no, they must grow them because they sell them all winter. So you can definitely buy them at Green Life sometimes. But I recommend, I'm really trying to, I just met a guy last weekend that said he knew where I could get nettles, and so I'm hoping he calls me, and so we can go hiking and get the nettles.
I know where there's nettles.
Do you?
Yeah, down our road
Really?
in the woods. Yeah.
Can I come over sometime?
Yeah,
soon?
sure.
So I'd really love to harvest nettles.
Yeah.
Fabulous. And that's where you need the gloves. And something to know about harvesting nettles, and really about a lot of plants. You saw how I harvested the artemisia. What I want to do is I want to see that the plant can still grow after I've taken what I've needed from it. And also I really feel like the energy's in the top part, the uppermost part of the plant, with exceptions, like the ground ivy, I use that all the way to the ground. The cleavers, I use it almost all the way to the ground. But I never harvest like right down to the ground. I'll always harvest a little bit further up, and you just study the plant for a little while, and you can see where its leaves are really, really full of life. And this one right here is about right here. So if I were going to harvest this plant, I would harvest it at about right here to get the best medicine or the best nutrients value or the best energy from this plant. So that's kind of what you want to do with nettles too. You don't have to take the whole plant, and you're really not going to get as much bang for your buck if you do, so you might as well just take the part that's vital, the most vital. So I would harvest just the tops of the nettles, not the very tippy tops, but you look at the plant again, you can see it, like these leaves are getting a little bit yellower, they have more holes in them, they just don't look as effulgent. You really start to pick up on its energy, and you can see where the medicine is.
And will it grow back from where you cut it?
Yeah, in most cases it will.
Okay.
In borage, it'll start to send. It has these little little things ready to shoot off the sides. So if I cut it right here, it's still going to shoot off the sides and keep growing and flower and produce seeds.
What do you do with borage?
Well, right now I'm really not doing anything with it, although I have a big garden full of it. What I'm using borage for is I planted it in my garden, which has a lot of clay soil. Borage amends the soil and prepares it for other plants. It breaks it up, it aerates it, it nutrifies it. The red clover in there is perfect. Thank you, fairies, because red clover is an incredible cover for your garden to fix nutrients, especially nitrogen in the soil. So that's really what I'm doing. I'm breaking up a lot of old clay soil and getting it ready to plant in next year. We can go through the forest if you want to do a little light hike and kind of see a different whole zone. What we've been seeing here is kind of like the yard or the meadow or the, roadside or forest edge kind of zone of plants. And in the woods, it's a whole different cornucopia. So if you want to go up there, we can. This one is like a really common plant most of us ate when we were little kids. And we didn't know why or what we were doing, but we knew it was yummy and we ate it. It looks just like a shamrock. Mm-hmm. And it's related to the shamrock. It's called sorrel. And some people call it sour grass. And they call it that because it tastes very sour. And the reason why it tastes very sour is because it has a whole lot of vitamin C in it. So it's good for vitamin C. It also has oxalic acid in it. So it's not one that you want to eat a lot of every day. But boy, I mean, it's sure good. And when you need it, when you need what that plant has, it's going to taste really good to you. And when you don't need what it has, it's not going to taste very good to you. It's going to taste like too sour.
Is the earth form of sour?
It has little yellow flowers on it.
What is it? Sour.
It's called sour grass or sorrel.
I love this.
And it has little yellow flowers on it. And the little yellow flowers are edible. And it also has these little seed pods on it. And the little seed pods are edible. So,
I'm gonna swallow it.
ooh, and the seed pods are sour.
They have a lot of.
They get your saliva going,
Well, that's okay because I'm not that. Oh, what's this place for Mama?
This is where I expect there's some poison ivy.
Well, there's not much, but there is some right here. This is Sister Ivy. Good Sister Ivy. She teaches us about boundaries. She teaches us to be respectful.
That's there.
Yep, and she teaches us to really tune in and be conscious when we're going in nature. What is this one?
What is that?
That one looks like a wild grape.
Like muscadine?
Oh, I sure would love it if it were. Definitely wild grape. You can tell by the stringent taste of the leaves. Now I would say that the way to eat this one raw would be to marinate it with lemon juice and olive oil and then use it to wrap up like sprouted quinoa or something like a dolma. It would be really excellent like that. But I would recommend marinating it for sure first because it's very bitter. I mean, it's not as bitter as some of the stuff we've been trying today, but it's still going to taste a lot better if you marinate it and get rid of some of that bitter quality. And then, of course, you can steam it and do the same thing. You can use it to wrap up bulgur wheat or whatever to make dolmas. Or if you're raw, what's good to use is sprouted quinoa or if you food process cauliflower and you make kind of like a cauliflower couscous and you mix it with a little olive oil and herbs and things, then that's a really nice way to eat like a raw sort of bulgur wheat textured thing. What is this? Yeah, this one's the wild Indian strawberry. I wanted you to get a chance to see its foliage here. See how it has 5 leaves? Kind of like a cinquefoil. It looks like a little hand, kind of. And this is an edible green.
What is it called?
wild strawberry leaves. You can obviously make that into a tea. You ever seen a spit bug? This is pretty fascinating. My dad clued me into these. They live inside the spit. There's a little bug in there. There he is. Can you see him? Mm-hmm. Oh, there he is.
Oh my goodness.
A spit bug.
So the bug produces this.
He does. He's a pretty spitty little guy. I wonder how they can produce that much spit, you know?
In North Carolina.
Spit and
Southern
chew.
bug.
Tobacco.
All right. So, you know, you got to wonder if their spit is good for something. I bet it is.
Look, it's all over the place.
Well, this is kind of a nondescript little plant right here, but this is mountain mint. It's another example of mountain mint. It's rather nondescript, but boy, take a whiff of that. Really? Sure. It is definitely minty.
Oh, wow.
Mountain mint.
That is good.
This is a hot one.
Yummy.
I think that one's called a pink. But I think it looks a lot like the Maltese cross that grows out in Colorado, so that's what I've been calling it, Maltese cross. I'm pretty sure its name is pink, some sort of pink flower. This is the foliage of the wild carrot plant. Its other name is Queen Anne's lace. So this is the wild carrot plant. It does have a little edible root. It's very small and white, but it is an edible carrot. You can steam it and have it just like you would eat carrots. Also, the seed of this particular plant is a natural birth control. If you chew like 16 of the seeds every day, it prevents implantation of the egg in the uterus wall. So a lot of the native women would use it as birth control, obviously, if they didn't want to conceive. And it has a big white flower head. You've probably all seen it. The way to distinguish it from its poisonous relatives is that it has in the center of it one black flower. It has a big umbel with tons of little white flowerlets and one tiny little black one in the center, like almost a deep, deep purple black. And they flower a little later in the year. But you can see the foliage, it's exactly like a carrot.
You can eat it. Can you eat it raw?
Yeah.
The carrot.
Yes, yeah, you can. It's good compare and contrast actually here with the sassafras. This is a tulip tree. This one always looks like it's like an angel with two legs and two wings. That's a tulip. 2 wings, 2 legs, 2 lip. And this one looks sort of like an angel or a goddess with 1 leg, or where you can't see, you know what I mean. Undifferentiated legs down there. That one's sassafras. So that's the difference. What was that? Is that an oyster? I think that is an oyster mushroom.
Wow.
Look at that.
Mama, are oyster mushrooms edible?
Oh, they are so edible.
How do you tell between a edible mushroom and a poisonous?
That is the $1 million question, my dear. There are certain ones that you can tell are edible. I wish I had seen where this one came from. A lot of it is determined on what kind of tree it's growing on, or if it's growing on the ground. And then there are a lot of different things you need to know about mushrooms before you can tell which ones are poisonous and which ones are edible.
Yummy.
But you're pretty safe with morels because they're very distinct. You're pretty safe with chanterelles. And
What are morels?
they're a kind of mushroom. And then you're pretty safe with oyster mushrooms that are growing on hardwood. But you don't want to harvest them off a pine because then they have a toxin.
What do the oyster mushrooms look like?
Well, they look a lot like that one actually, but they get really big. They get really big and They look kind of like big white ears. You know, they can get to be that big.
Oh, wow.
And then the underside of them, the veins all go in one direction. And they're they're delicious.
Can you eat them raw?
You know, usually people don't eat mushrooms raw because mushrooms they're really tough in their cellular structure. And if you eat them raw, you can't really get any of the nutrients out of them. Although if you dry them and then eat them raw, then I think you get some nutritional value out of them. Most people don't think you can get any nutrition out of a mushroom unless you cook it. So,
And I'm pretty sure that's what
well,
it's
you
called.
can just lay it out on a towel or a sheet in a place in your home that's dry, or you can. You don't really want to put them in the sun because the sun can bleach a lot of the goodness out of them. So you want to put it someplace in a cool spot in your house to dry them. Some people who have dehydrators will put them in their dehydrator on a very low temperature and dry them out, and that's a really good way too. And then, you know, if you're drying herbs, one good way is to make a bundle and hang it up and let it dry that way. That way you get less chance of molding. But with mushrooms, just kind of laying them out on a paper towel on your counter or some other place inside where it's cool and dark and ambient temperature, then let them dry out and let them get totally dry before you store them away. But that's the Jack in the Pulpit getting ready to flower. This one might actually. This is a Senecio aurelius, I believe, is its Latin. It's also called the golden ragwort. Any plant ending in the name wort is a medicinal plant that has been used for a long time, since medieval times at least. This plant, a lot of people say is poisonous, but I've read from a lot of other sources that it's not poisonous, that's a mistake, and that it's a good medicine. This one will bring on a woman's period if her cycle is late. That's the one thing that I know about it. It's also kind of uterus shaped, so you wonder what else it might do for that. It's really a beautiful plant. What's that?
Is that the same as Galex? No, it looks a little like Galex from here.
No, it's Senecio.
It's not? Okay,
Yeah,
it's not.
but the most remarkable thing about this plant that I found is that it has an incredible rose geranium flavor. I don't recommend eating a lot of it, but this is what I do with it. I just take it, bite it, and there's this incredible rose bouquet in your mouth. It's amazing. It's totally amazing. It's a total hit. So if any of you want to try, I'm going to pick this other big leaf, but I'm going to ask that we don't pick any more of the leaves because that's kind of enough for that plant. Just take a little piece and see. You don't even have to chew it up. It's almost like you don't get it if you chew it up. If you bite it, you get it. You just literally just bite it, and then it's in your mouth. It's an incredible rose bouquet, and it has a golden kind of daisy-like flower on it. A little later on. A lot of Jack in the Pulpit coming this year. Here's more Senecio if anybody else wants to try it. Oh, this is good. This is a good. Oh.
that was pretty.
Yeah, this one. This one looks a lot like cleavers, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's very much like cleavers, but the flavor's totally different. This one's called woodruff.
Oh, woodruff.
Totally. I mean, it looks almost exactly. See, but it's a little darker, a little glossier. The hairs aren't quite as big, but it's definitely is called woodruff. It looks exactly like cleavers, but the leaves are shinier and a little darker, and it grows more in the wood. It'll grow in the woods. The cleavers tends to grow on the edge of the woods. This one will grow in the dark under the canopy. I want everybody to try one of these. They also have a succulent flower, which is edible. They make like little banana-looking things that grow on a stem. Everybody come and pick a leaf of this one. They're so delicious, and they're full of moisture. They're full of liquid.
It's called
Stone crop.
It's different.
They taste a little mushroomy, actually.
I don't get much taste from it.
Do you see how it's succulent, though?
Yeah, it's definitely watery.
So that's a really good edible.
What do you do?
This is one of the best anti-viral cold and flu herbs that you can find. It's really good for the lungs, and it's extremely good for any kind of cut, for infections in the skin. And it has a lovely aroma, and the flower essence. I don't know if you guys know about flower essences at all, but it's not the essential oil, it's something different, of yarrow will help people cope with the stresses of the technocratic world.
Wow.
It helps you to be less sensitive. But that's a whole other kind of tutorial. But anyway, yeah, so real bitter herb, really good for colds and flus, particularly anything in the lungs.